Well, good morning and welcome to CityLine. It is great to be in your home. We are live every Thursday, and this morning is September 5th. Happy first day of school to all of our Tacoma students out there, and please drive careful. We have a great hour ahead of us. Later on the hour, we'll be talking with Kelly from the Goodwill. She is here to talk about hot careers that you need to know about, and also about an amazing job fair that's coming up. And then the Parking Technical Advisory Group is here. Joe and Steph are here to talk about what is the Parking Technical Advisory Group and what changes are happening that you need to know about. Tacoma Historical Society is here. Oh my gosh, do I have the dynamic duo for you. Holland Cohen and Mayor Victoria Woodards will be here to talk about their upcoming dinner. And then with me right now, I have three amigos, three wonderful men who are here to talk about the Point Defiance Gardens. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Ross Wilton. You are with Metro Parks and you are on the Regional Parks crew. Welcome,
Yes.
my dear.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you here. You brought with you Mr. Bruce Lind. You are with the Tacoma Rose Society.
That's correct, yes.
Welcome to CityLine.
Thank you much.
And rounding out the comfy couch is Pete Hayward. You are with the Washington State Dahlia Society. Is that correct?
That's correct. Good morning.
Good morning. It's great to have you here. Well, let's talk about this because roses, flowers, I mean, Point Defiance, as I was telling you, when I take that ferry and I know I have to sit for a while, I get out of my car and I walk over there and have a Zen moment in that garden. So, Ross, I think many of us envision Point Defiance Park. We think of the zoo or we think of Fort Nisqually. So let's talk about some of those diverse gardens in the park.
Yeah, I mean, Point Defiance is a beautiful, wonderful place. I mean, we have plenty of gardens. Although the zoo has their own beautiful gardens as well, taken care by their horticulturalists up there, and the same with Fort Nisqually. But for us in the gardens, and we have little hot spots. We have the main area with the big border lawn where we have our events and stuff like that. And then we have the rose garden with Bruce and the dahlia garden. And we have the fuchsia. And that's just inside the fenced area. And then when you step out, you go into the lodge, and there's borders in the lodge, and they have the Japanese garden.
Yes.
And yeah, I love the Japanese gardens, one of
Me
my
too.
favorites, yeah. Hopefully one day it'll all change and we'll be able to work on that. And then, you go out into the 5 Mile Drive and you have the rhododendron garden, and the Native Society have their garden up there, the native garden. And nowadays we also have the dunes, which you just cross over the bridge.
I know.
And you're right there, and that's a whole prairie garden right there. And that's just another fantastic thing.
It's like an ecosphere. There's everything. There's something for everybody there.
Yep, totally.
There really is. Bruce, tell us about the Tacoma Rose Society.
Well, the name says its purpose. It's an educational organization, and it's the oldest plant society in the state of Washington, founded in 1911. And since the very beginning, we've been cooperating with Metro Parks and providing backup support for the Rose Garden at Point Defiance.
I love that. When you say backup support, I think you're really minimalizing what you do there, because in my point of view, you bring volunteers, a wealth of knowledge, and history about some of these beautiful flowers that we're seeing.
Well, it is true. We have people in the society that have just joined this summer, and we have a woman, Jo Martin, who's been a member for over 50 years. So we have a range of levels of experience and a lot of people who are willing to give advice.
I love
and
that.
And people who are willing to get their hands dirty as well.
And boy, that's really all you need, advice and getting your hands dirty, and our world's a better place. Pete, tell us about the Washington State Dahlia Society.
Well, the Washington State Dahlia Society is a group of dahlia enthusiasts, clearly, and we're also a group within the American Dahlia Society. So we're all over the country, and yeah, we're just all in love with dahlias and seem to take over our lives this time of year.
Oh, and these dahlias, I kind of have this thing where I think that whoever created flowers didn't make the perfect flower ever, because some have smells, some have thorns. But if you're looking for the showiest flower on earth, my money goes to a dahlia every single time, because it takes your breath away. They are unbelievable. Ross, let's talk about what does the partnership with the Garden Club mean to your abilities to offer so many beautiful and diverse experiences?
I think with the trial gardens, the Dahlia trial gardens, they're great because people actually get to see different varieties that may come out in the future, and just different types of the same plants. And the same with the Rose Society. You know, there's such a diverse group of different roses, and then only some people get to see what you go into the nursery, and you have a selection of maybe 10 or 20, but you can come to Point Defiance and you can see a selection of over 100.
Absolutely.
And throughout the other parts of the park and the other societies, and the Native Garden Society, that's a massive group of people that come and look after that.
Oh, yeah.
It's close to like 30 people, and they're connected to the Tacoma. They're connected to the greater, I can't remember what it's called now, the Garden Foundation.
Yes.
And then the rhododendron garden. I mean, in the spring, that's just absolutely beautiful. So we're very fortunate to have the trial gardens, and it's good for the public because they get to see everything.
Exactly, exactly. So Pete, let's talk about what is a trial garden.
So a trial garden is where hybridizers, people who are creating new varieties of dahlias, are sending their dahlias in. There's 8 of them in the country. The Point Defiance garden is the largest. We're able to take in 75 entries a year, 3 plants per entry. And so what happens is people send these in to Ross and his crew, and they get the plants started for us, and we bring them out. And then dahlia judges, members of the American Dahlia Society and Federation of Northwest Dahlia Growers, that come out. We have these judging parties out there in the garden, and the flowers get judged. And there's a scoring system, and if they score high enough, they'll become a next year's introduction.
Wow. Okay, so any repeat offenders in terms of people who are submitting things that perhaps are like the sommelier of dahlias?
So sure, there's definitely, Washington is the capital of the world for dahlia production right now, for new dahlias. You have people like sweet Mrs. Wilton, who lives in Tacoma herself. Her and Mr. Wilton live here. You have a lot of people from Washington and all over the world that are sending these in to have them judged.
Wow, that's incredible. So, Bruce, let's go back over to roses again. We're kind of bouncing through the fields here. Can anybody join the Tacoma Rose Society in terms of volunteering their work at Point Defiance?
Yes. Yes to 2 things. Anyone can join the Tacoma Rose Society. You can start with no experience, just an interest in learning more about gardening. We'd love to have you. And there are some images there. Anyone can volunteer as long as they're working with Rose Society people. You don't want people, Ross doesn't want people freelancing.
Yeah. It happens too, so.
No rebels.
No rebels, yes.
So what a great place for someone, let's say, who has just moved here and thinks, I have a little bit of space in Tacoma because nobody really has a big yard, and if I want to start doing roses, this is the place to learn about it and figure out what will grow and what won't.
That's right. They can start in the spring and volunteer with the pruning, and then they can work in replanting occasionally, and then doing the deadheading in the summer. And so it's an all-season volunteer opportunity.
I love that. What would you add to that?
They can volunteer to help prune the roses at the end of the year as well.
Oh, okay.
So that wasn't my question.
It's an extended opportunity.
Between the 3 of you, do you have volunteers that cross over? Are people just in love with gardening and say, I want to garden the whole park?
We have, well, I don't think they work with these guys, but we actually have volunteers that come in and volunteer a whole day's worth of work. And also we deal with program kids as well during the summer. And it's almost like a volunteer opportunity for them because they come along and they work with us dealing with the dahlias and the roses as well.
I love that. Pete, can anyone join the Washington State Dahlia Society and volunteer their work?
They sure can, and both. They can not only join the club by just visiting our website, and it has all the information on there, but Tuesday mornings at 9 o'clock, we're in the garden every week, rain or shine, and taking care of the plants, and anyone is welcome to come down, and if they have some questions or learn some more information, we're glad to help them.
I love that. So the gardens, Ross, they're in season now, and there's always something to enjoy year-round,
yes.
Be it native or the Japanese gardens, and even the lush green when the rhodies aren't in bloom.
Yeah. A lot of people go walking through the rhodie gardens even when there's nothing there. But for us, it all starts mostly in the main part of the garden when we have the witch hazels and the edgeworthias and There's other plants. The daffodils are coming out of the ground there, and it starts off there and then sort of works on throughout the whole summer. Then we plant our annuals in May, and all throughout the summer there's everything. There's one thing popping up for color or something else, and throughout the whole park it's very interesting all year long. And then for us in the winter, that's where most of our work is done, and actually most of the garden's work is done, is because you're preparing for the next year. We're preparing the soils, preparing the mulch and all that kind of stuff, preparing the plants.
There we go.
Yeah, so it's a lot of hard work all year long.
And crossing your fingers and hoping when spring comes that we have some kind of idea about the kind of weather we're going to get.
Yes.
Because if it gets too wet, then the gardens, don't do well.
No.
Or if we don't have enough heat, well then, so it's always subject to Mother Nature.
Yes, it is very much so.
Absolutely. Yeah. Pete, I want to ask you, how did you get involved in the Dahlia Society?
Well, I just was a gardener, enjoyed gardening, and started growing. Started with one dahlia plant at my own house, and it just didn't go great. And I actually had a weird dream that I won a blue ribbon for a dahlia, so I said, I'm going to do it. Why not? And so I joined the Dahlia Society and started just like any novice out there, wanted to learn more about the plants. And the next year I had 30 plants, and I currently in my yard have about 250 plants.
Oh my gosh!
It's just kind of spiraled out of control, and but it's very enjoyable. It's therapeutic, it's relaxing, and it's beautiful. I give them to my neighbors, and used to give them out at the food bank, and so they go to a good cause.
Now that's the story right there. You're just sitting over there so unassuming. Had a dream, jumped in, the next year 30, and now, boy, I gotta get your address off the air so I can drive by your house and look at this. And then last question for you, Mr. Bruce, how did you get involved?
Well, I started gardening in Wisconsin, where the roses were sort of an annual crop other than species, and came out here and was just amazed. In February, everything was green, and I worked with a guy who had 25 roses in a ring around his driveway, and I thought, those are spectacular. When we buy a house, we'll start a rose garden. There was a small rose garden there, and now we have about 400 roses.
And the rest is history, as we say.
Yes.
Thank you, all three of you, for your love of gardening, for your generosity of spirit, and for teaching us how to make our yards and the world a more beautiful place. And I want to have you back here again in the spring. How's that? Yep. All right, great. Thank you so much. We're going to play some musical chairs. When we come back, we'll have Lauren Cohen and Mayor Victoria Woodard's in the seat to talk about the Tacoma Historical Society dinner. You don't want to miss that. We'll be right back.